Okay, in my previous YouTube video, we did the grade analyzer before, and I challenge you to find the redundant code or code that would make sense as put into smaller pieces and create shareability. So this is the before, and we're going to look at the after. Notice the difference is I have a main function now. Notice I have def, main, paren, colon, and I indent everything underneath it. So all this code is part of the main. From within the main, we call a prompt for integer. Notice we pass in the code that, or actually I should say, the text that we want to prompt for. We'll go over that individually in a minute. And that's down here. And we got get letter grade, and we got the min, find the lowest, and prompt for integer. And notice this code down here. This is what calls the main. So when the program runs, it comes down and says, okay, this is the main. It's a definition or a function. I'll skip it. Okay, here's a get letter grade. I take in a letter grade and I must return something. And here's the get min number. And then prompt for integer. Oh, main. This piece calls, well, this piece of code calls up here. And the code starts dropping down. So we set the divisor to 3. We set the lowest to 0. And notice this is a function where we pass in a string. We pass in 3 different strings. Let's go take a look at that code. So temporarily, the program pauses. We send text over into the prompt for integer. So transfer, controls transfer down to here. And we take in the prompt message. And we set it to a -1. And we get into a while with try except. So notice this code is shared for each of the 3 test grades. So we come in, we set it to a -1. Is -1 less than 0? And we say true. And then we try to take the prompt message, which is passed in. Where does this prompt message come from? It comes up from here. So we call that code or that function 3 times for each of the 3 test scores we need. So that comes in, and that goes out to the screen. We try to convert whatever they type to an integer and put it into here. If it works, whatever you put in, say 95, is converted to an int, and then we come down out of the loop up to here, and is 95 less than 0? The answer is false, and we return the 95. If I try to type in 95x, the except will catch the error, and we said input a number. Because this failed, input is still -1, and we come up, is -1 less than 0? And the answer is true, and we ask again. The only way we get out of this loop is if you successfully convert to an integer that is 0 or greater. If you put an invalid number, the except catches the errors, and you stay in the loop. Then you come up here, and after you get the 3 test scores, you ask if they want to drop the lowest grade. And then if they say yes, drop the lowest grade, we call a function called min number. We pass in test 1, 2, and 3. And we set the divisor to 2. If this is false, we skip right over it. We add 1 plus the second test plus the third, back out the lowest, and divide by the divisor. The divisor is changed from 3 to 2 only when you drop the lowest grade. So let's go take a look at the min number. It passes in 1 integer, a second integer, and a third integer. I test 1, I test 2, I test 3. And then we come down here, and we call them I number 1, I number 2, and I number 3. Even though this code isn't redundant, it's sometimes good to isolate certain pieces of logic separately. For example, I could have one team member write this function, and I could have another team member write this function, and we bring it together. So we determine the lowest. We compare 1 to 2 and 1 to 3. If 1 is the lowest, 1 is the lowest. If I get to here, we know 1's not the lowest. It's between 2 and 3. So if 2 is less than 3, 2 is the lowest. If I get to here, then 3 is the lowest. I return back out the lowest. See the return? When you see a return, you better have a variable to receive it. So what I do here is I pass in if they want to drop the lowest grade, test 1, 2, and 3. I find out the lowest in this code, and whatever gets returned is assigned here. Okay, notice get letter grade. You pass in a numeric value and out comes a string. What's that code? So we go down here, we pass in the average, and we have a bunch of if statements. We have the return. So for example, say someone's average is a 95. Is 95 greater than 97? False. Is 95 greater than or equal to 94? True. We put an A into it. A gets sent out through the return. And A gets put into here, and I put it out to the screen. Let's try running it. Oh, I'm getting an error. Let's go see what's wrong. Obviously, I must have changed something in my code. All right, so there's a letter grade. I think we're ready to run this program. Okay, so I'm going to put in 100x. Let's see what's happening here. I put in 100x. -1 is here. Is -1 less than 0? True. I put 100x. 100x doesn't work. I come down to here. This is still 0. You only get a value here if this works. We come back up. I'm going to type 100. 100 can be converted to int. It's put into here, comes up. 100 is not less than 0, so I return. I get out of the loop and I return 100. So let's go watch the code execute. So I type in 100. Now we're looking for the second score. I'm going to put 95x, and it's going to repeat. I type 95 and then 90. I say do not drop the lowest grade. There you go. I run it a second time. I put in 100, 90, 95, and I say drop the lowest grade, and there you go.